Palestine updates for today. There's a lot going on, so let's get into it. Israel just attacked a UN aid distribution center in Rafah, killing at least one person and wounding 22 people. Intense Israeli strikes continue as we enter into the third day of Ramadan. Homes have been targeted and multiple casualties have been reported, but we don't know the exact number because many people are still stuck under the rubble. The Australian government has reportedly retracted a series of visas that they had issued to people fleeing from Gaza. And this is the same type of visitor visas that they were giving to Ukrainian refugees as well. At least 4 Palestinians were also killed in Israeli raids that took place across the West Bank. Palestine updates for today, and there's a lot going on, so let's get into it. Senator Chuck Schumer came out of whatever hole he was hiding in this morning and said that it would be a grave mistake for Israel to reject a two-state solution, and he urged to do everything to secure a ceasefire, free the captives, and deliver aid to Gaza. You may be thinking, Ariana, he is literally Amy Schumer's uncle and a raging Zionist. And I would say, yes, I agree with you. That is right. It's still kind of a big deal because the U.S. Senate has never talked bad on Israel. Is the Capitol Hill crumbling because of Netanyahu's psycho ass? Probably. The White House also called for an urgent investigation this morning on the UN aid facility that was attacked yesterday. Protests were going hot in both New York and San Francisco. In San Francisco, protesters chained themselves in front of the international terminal, not allowing anyone to go in and out. And in New York, they blocked a distribution center. Israel is now enforcing new entry restrictions into Al-Aqsa Mosque during Ramadan, requiring people to obtain a permit as well as a magnetic card for the day. They also deployed 3,000 officers in preparation. The IDF still continues to raid a number of towns in the West Bank during the month of Ramadan. This includes refugee camps and homes. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't want to talk about the news today because it's incredibly devastating and the same thing continues to happen over and over and over again. But here I am, so let's talk about the second massacre that's happened. Past 24 hours, in total, at least 56 people have been killed and over 300 and counting injured. This is because of 5 separate attacks on people who were trying to receive aid. The largest one happened at the Kuwait roundabout where 55 people were killed and over 155 people were injured. The injured that were able to get transported were taken to Al-Shifa Hospital, a hospital that's not even operating right now. Most of the injured were left at the Kuwait roundabout because the Israeli tanks stayed there and rendered it almost impossible to be able to evacuate people out. So most people who were wounded ended up bleeding to death at the Kuwait roundabout. The Israeli government came back and denied the whole entire attack from happening. So in their eyes, this never even happened. Palestine updates for today, and we have another massacre. Let's talk about it. On Monday morning, the Israeli forces attacked Al-Shifa Hospital in northern Gaza. Not only were thousands of civilians refuging at the Al-Shifa Hospital, it was also the main place where journalists had camped out to do their live hits and to be able to report on what's going on. Israeli military first dropped leaflets, but no one really knew if they should believe it or not, and then they went in and they destroyed all of the journalist equipment. They also beat and detained Al Jazeera reporter Ismail Al-Qul, and no one knows where he's at. They literally just took him. Also reportedly killed General Fayek Al-Mahbouh, and he was in charge of coordinating all of the aid into northern Gaza. Don't know exactly what the damage from this attack is, but what we do know right now is that more than 80 people were arrested. No one knows where the Israeli military took them, as well as 81 people killed and 160 people injured, but this number could be much higher. We just don't know. The entire population in Gaza is now facing high levels of food insecurity. Every single household is skipping meals on a daily basis. It's for today, and there's a lot happening, especially after the Al-Shifa massacre, so let's get into it. Thousands are now fleeing the Al-Shifa hospital as the besiegement continues, and many people that are still stuck in the hospital have continued their fast for a second day, but they were not able to eat breakfast in the morning. After going under a number of attacks yesterday, they were not able to replenish the food, and then this morning they were not able to eat either, but they're still fasting because it's Ramadan. According to Axios, Biden told Netanyahu during a phone call that he's not trying to undermine him politically, and Netanyahu said publicly that he made it very clear to Biden that Israel is determined to completely eliminate Hamas battalions in Rafah. He clearly told Biden that he wants to move forward with the Rafah invasion in short terms. Since October, about 300,000 Israelis have applied for gun licenses, and about 100,000 of them have received those gun licenses. I'll sign updates for today. Shelling at Al-Shifa Hospital continues, and most of the people who tried to flee were not able to make it as Israeli forces shot them in the middle of the street. Another Al Jazeera journalist who was reporting at Al-Shifa Hospital was also arrested by Israel. His name was Mahmoud Aliwa, and no one knows where he's at either. Displaced Palestinians from Al-Shifa who were able to make it out alive told Al Jazeera that soldiers fired directly into the building that they were refuging at, and then they asked them to strip off their clothing completely and to go into the hospital yard for interrogation. Gaza is a Muslim majority country, and so people tend to lean more conservatively, dress more conservatively, and so the fact that they just made everyone strip in the courtyard for interrogation should tell you everything you need to know. The hospital is now completely out of service, and Israel still insists on the operation at the hospital based on intelligence that they say they've received. Past week, more than 100 aid workers have been killed and dozens have been wounded because of 8 different attacks that the Israeli military has conducted on aid workers. Netanyahu also said this morning that he will soon approve a plan to evacuate more than 1.5 million Palestinians who are in Rafah. Where the fuck he wants them to go, I don't know. According to WHO, many children in Gaza are now at the brink of death due to acute hunger, and newborns are dying due to low birth rate. Palestine updates for today, and there's a lot going on, so let's get into it. Earlier, Israeli forces ordered Palestinians to evacuate Al-Shifa Hospital, threatening to blow the hospital up, and then they reportedly ended up blowing it up. Different publications said different numbers for the amount of people that were killed in the past 24 hours, but what I was able to find was 65 people killed and 92 people wounded, but I think that number might be higher. 13 patients at Al-Shifa Hospital also died due to their medicine, oxygen, and food being cut. Today is Mother's Day in Gaza, and according to the Palestinian Red Crescent, mothers are skipping meals on a regular basis in order to make sure their children are fed. Someone also threw a flaming object into the Israeli embassy in the Netherlands. The suspect was arrested, but we don't know who it is. As of today, the acute famine in northern Gaza has taken the lives of 27 children. The U.S. has submitted a Security Council resolution. It's a draft calling for an immediate ceasefire tied to the release of hostages. The wording is incredibly vague and unclear what this exactly means. We don't know if they're pushing for a temporary ceasefire or a permanent one. Blinken also said that they are close to reaching a ceasefire deal, but they've also said this multiple times, so I don't know how much validity it has. Palestine updates, let's go over what the hell happened at the UN today. The US proposed a draft resolution to the UN today over what's happening in Gaza. Russia, China, and Algeria vetoed the draft resolution that the US proposed. Debate came down specifically to whether it was clearly demanding for a ceasefire or not. The wording apparently determines the imperative of an immediate ceasefire, not specifically demanding for a ceasefire. China and Russia believe that nothing less than calling for an immediate ceasefire is appropriate. Riyad Mansour, the Palestinian ambassador to the UN, said that the draft was one-sided and framed as a, quote, terrorist issue, not a genocide. The US then responded and said that the veto was outrageous. After all of this went down, France came forward and said that they are also working on their own draft resolution with the US, European, and Arab allies. But I'm afraid if it doesn't specifically call for a ceasefire, China and Russia will continue to veto these resolutions. The UN just passed a ceasefire resolution, but let's talk about what that actually means. It's not permanent, it's only for the remainder of Ramadan, which ends on April 9th. In return, they demanded that all of the Israeli hostages are sent back. During the 2 weeks, both parties would work on a permanent ceasefire that would enact on April 9th or close to the end of Ramadan. That's the goal. The resolution also demands that humanitarian access is open for medical, food, and other needs that have been taken away from the people in Gaza. Israel has to also now comply comply with obligations under the international law if they detain anyone after the ceasefire resolution was passed. As a person that's been covering this news very closely for almost the past 6 months since it started, I think this is very meager. I think they're barely responding to the people's demands that everyone has been making for at least 5 months now. I don't really know how to feel about this because I don't think it's going to lead to anything substantial in the long run, and also I don't think Israel is going to listen, period. I don't think they ever have. So we're just gonna have to see, but it's meager at best. Palestine updates for today, and I'm pissed. In the past 24 hours since the UN passed their useless resolution, 81 people have been killed and 93 people have been wounded. 12 people have drowned trying to get aid from the ocean. 6 people were killed in a stampede trying to get the aid. Overall, these airdrops that America continues to brag about has killed 18 people. There were 18 people that were killed last night in Rafah, 9 of which are children. According to Tariq Abu Azam, a Al Jazeera reporter on the ground in Rafah, the humanitarian situation remains dire despite the UN resolution. People are running extremely low on food and fighting for the little aid that they receive. Animal feed is running out because people have no other choice than to eat animal feed. The Al-Shifa Hospital tanks ran over the already deceased bodies. Gotten so fucking bad that the Pentagon chief himself, when he met with Israel's defense minister, called the situation a humanitarian catastrophe. When has the Pentagon ever cared about anyone but themselves? If the UN can't even convince Israel to do a ceasefire for 2 weeks, just until the remainder of Ramadan, I don't know what to tell you. Palestine updates for today. It's the second day since the UN passed the draft resolution for a ceasefire. Nothing has changed. Fighting and airstrikes in the Gaza Strip continues across the northern, central, and southern part of the Strip. It's gotten so bad that the Gaza Health Ministry issued a warning in the past 24 hours asking people in the northern part of the Gaza Strip to not collect aid at distribution centers since Israel continues to mass kill people who try to get aid. 24 people have been killed in the past 24 hours in Rafah. These were mostly children and women. The past 24 hours, 76 people have been killed and 106 people have been wounded. 70% of the people in northern Gaza are now experiencing catastrophic hunger, and according to the UNRWA, there has been no significant change in aid deliveries for the northern Gaza Strip. Over 25 days in March, there was only an average of 155 trucks going in every single day, as opposed to 500 trucks pre-October 7th. Journalist Bayan Abu Sultan has also been missing since March 19. Nobody knows where she's at. The last communication anyone heard from her was from a tweet claiming that she saw her brother get killed at Al-Shifa. No one knows where she's at. Palestine updates for today, but trigger warning, today's news is really heavy. In the past 24 hours, a video leaked of 2 unarmed civilian Palestinian men trying to walk back to their homes and waving white flags. Although they were waving those white flags, they were still shot by Israeli tanks, and then the Israeli tanks proceeded to drag their bodies into sand and litter. There's a group of Palestinians who witnessed this happening and filmed it, and their whereabouts are completely unknown. A 5-year-old boy also died due to malnutrition. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, there were 200 displaced Palestinians that were refuging at the Al-Shifa Hospital who were killed by Israeli military. Now, the Israeli military claimed that they were all fighters and that they actually evacuated all of the civilians into safety. The ICJ has also ordered Israel to stop barring medical and food aid from going into the Gaza Strip, but so far Israel hasn't listened, so we'll see where that goes. In the past 24 hours, 62 people have been killed and 91 people have been wounded. Palestine updates for today. Despite the increasing famine that's happening in northern Gaza, in the past 5 days, Israeli forces have only accepted 11 UN missions into the northern Gaza Strip. In total, 18 missions were denied and 13 missions were either postponed or withdrawn. Christian Palestinians have been barred from being able to enter Jerusalem's Old City. This is because of extreme restrictions that they've put into entering that area. An Israeli airstrike in northern Syria killed 42 people. This is believed to be both civilians and military personnel, although the civilian casualty was much higher than the military personnel. It's also believed to be an indirect aggression towards Iranian proxies that are currently in Syria, but we don't know. On top of the airstrikes that happened across the Gaza Strip that killed 71 people and wounded 112 people in the past 24 hours. Israeli police brutally attacked people who were at an anti-war rally who were protesting against the war in Gaza, and 5 of them. Palestine updates for today, let's get into it. 3-day ceasefire negotiation was held in Cairo, Egypt, and it ended with a quote breakthrough. We don't necessarily know what that means. Hamas also came forward and said that the ceasefire negotiations are ongoing and the ball is in Israel's court. So I don't really know. Maybe we're having some movement there, but we'll see. In the past 24 hours, there was massive bombing in the central part of the Gaza Strip. This includes Nusrat refugee camp. In the past 24 hours, 97 people have been killed and 123 have been wounded. Israeli forces bulldozed more than 400 seedlings for olive trees in the West Bank. Starbucks branches in both the Middle East and North Africa are planning to lay off more than 2,000 people, and this is because of the boycotts that have been happening against Starbucks. According to WHO, 1 out of every 6 child in northern Gaza is acutely malnourished.